I guess we're going werewolf hunting. Lummelder. Montador is studying Percy carefully, but not in the way men usually do. His eyes are narrowed and his brow is furrowed, as though there is something he doesn't understand. Yes, Monty. I should twist your head off for calling me that. Percy waits for a moment before replying. When are you going to do it? Uh, your head looks decidedly better on your shoulders. Consider yourself lucky. He shakes his head. You don't find me frightening at all, do you? No, should I? I've fought many battles in my lifetime. I've killed men with my bare hands, tearing their limbs off and cleaving off their heads to leave them in a pool of their own blood. I've done all of this in the name of my country. I'm a cold, brutal killer who needs no reason beyond the request of a fool for a king. That doesn't frighten you? I'm from the Abyss. Yes, I guess exposure to the Abyss would render much of this world's violence quite sterile, wouldn't it? The Abyss holds the souls of men far more vicious than you. It is likely I have even seen some of your victims. Montador shakes his head. That someone as soft and feeble as you can survive the Abyss makes me think its terrors are exaggerated. Do you hate me? Monty? I don't hate you. Let's just leave it at that. Maybe I should talk to the others. I've been avoiding it, but sooner or later I might have to, and it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Hello there.
I don't know how much they have to say. Um, how do you feel about? Why did you come to Claymore? I'd like to know more about you. Evelyn looks away into the distance. Her voice is quiet. There's nothing worth knowing about me, Rowan. Tell me where you're from. I'm from the Xi'an province of Central Akaida. Tell me about Akaida. It is a large continent across the Crescent Sea. The climate is warmer and more tropical than it is here. Western Akaida has many marshes and swamps that can be made into fertile farmland, and there are many hills and small mountains. Central and eastern Akaida gets less rain so it's drier, and in some parts of the south there are desert-like conditions. Nothing like the sand dunes of Alsace though. There are mountains and large rivers in central Akaida. Some of the mountains and rivers are considered sacred to certain faiths and monastic orders. And what are the people like? It depends on the area. People in farming communities are peaceful and friendly. They are trusting of outsiders and welcome most visitors. People in the cities are pushy, loud, and untrusting of others. Akkadian cities can be very crowded because of the terrain makes it difficult to spread out. Most people are commoners. Wealthy people are usually in a position of power, either in the military or the local governing body. There are few and they have wealth that can far exceed that of Edinburgh's nobles. Most Akkadians are fickle and quick to change sides. Honor and loyalty don't mean much to them. Are there many elves? There are very few. I've never met pure elves outside of my family, and there are few of us left. Acquaintance are mostly human. There are no dwarves, gnomes, or halflings where I'm from, although there are some in the northern areas. I'd like to know more about. No. There were other options. There's no honor or loyalty. I didn't mean to disparage Akaidan's people. I'm sorry. It doesn't look like Evanine wants to elaborate on her thoughts. Uh, Where are you from? The Xi'an province. Evelyn looks into the distance, but her expression is hard to read. She misses something, that much is evident. It is a busy, bustling place. The cities are large and crowded. You would think the people are rude if you visit it. They'll shove you aside in the streets and they'll shout right into your ears. And that's just the women. There is no such thing as an orderly line. The way of life there is push or be pushed. How did you become so ladylike then? She looks away after your compliment. Thank you, Roland. I suppose I had some more space. Why is that? My family had some power there. Care to elaborate on that? Evelyn suddenly looks upset. I I can't. I'm sorry. Please change the subject. Okay, the cities sound hectic. It may seem so to you, but it is the way of life there. People hold celebrations right in the streets. Parades, dancing, acrobats. There's always something going on in the streets. Not all cities are the same. Western Akkadian cities have changed to accommodate the Britannicans and Istarians that do trade there. Southern Akkadian cities have adapted for Khazarunian merchants. There is great variety there, just as there is here. Why don't you have an accent? My mother didn't have an accent, and I learned my common from her. She was from a place called Elysius, and that was where I was born. Where is Elysius? I don't know. My mother took me away just after I was born, and I've never been back. When I asked her where it was, she could only say it was far away and not on any map. Well, that's strange. What's even stranger is that nobody else has heard of it. Perhaps it's really small. I've always considered Xi'an my home anyways. Okay. Tell me about your family. Something has upset her. I, I'm sorry, please change the subject. Okay. Why did you come to Claymore? I had to leave my home. Why? I'm not ready to talk about this yet. I'm sorry. Okay. What do you think of Claymore? It's beautiful. The forests are large and the lakes are clean. There are more animals here. Okay. What do you think about the cities? I like the space. The buildings are large and well built. Al-Qaeda doesn't have as many stone buildings. The authorities are elected by the people, which is more fair, I think. It is more difficult to corrupt a governing body this way. Britannica's people have power. In Edinburgh, the people elect their lords. In Al-Qaeda, the provinces are mostly monarchies and the throne is passed along the family line. A power-hungry ruler can start a war by drafting an army and marching them to battle. Civilians have no right to refuse. Wouldn't that make for uprisings? Evelyn sighs as though she is unhappy with the ways of her people. It does. Our history is full of revolutions, some successful, some not, and all of them violent. Regardless of the cause, people fight and people die. Okay. What do you think of the people? They're just people, like all the rest. It doesn't sound like you like them. Well, not really. Just that they're just the same. Evelyn looks away, uncomfortable with the topic of conversation. I haven't had good dealings with many people. When I met someone like Gerald, he's taken away. I I don't have much faith in others, Roland. Do you have faith in me? I don't know you that well. Let's focus on our investigation, shall we? How long have you been in Claymore? I came to Claymore 6 months ago. The ship brought me to Southport by Sea of Stars. So what was Southport like? People were vulgar, greedy, and corrupt, and the authorities are either too afraid to help or they've been corrupted themselves. Pirates have all the power there. I'm accustomed to a certain level of vulgarity. It's very crowded where I'm from, and people push and shove and are very loud and impatient. But acquaintances are rarely seen in Southport, and elves are not common either. So they don't like Easterners. I had a mixed reaction. Most of the men were touchy. Some people had the impression that elves were haughty and treated me unkind. Still others thought an Akkadian would be unfamiliar with their ways and try to swindle me or take advantage of me in other ways. I didn't stay long and I traveled to other places, but my reception was never much better. It's not that everyone has been horrible, it's just difficult for travelers to start life somewhere without friends or family. I'm not very good at making friends. Sorry to hear about your troubles. Evelyn meets your gaze with her deep dark eyes for a moment, and once again you feel as though she can sense your motives. Thanks you, Roland. These are not my greatest troubles, but they do contribute to them. How did you end up in Edinburgh? After 3 months of traveling and discovering that I didn't fit in, I began wondering I was ready to give it up. Remembering how she felt is upsetting her, but she continues. I was in the mistwood, though I didn't know it then. I left the road and walked around for a few days. The forest is quiet and I could forget my worries and admire nature. I wandered into a clearing and saw a bubbling cauldron. Before I could run, witches were upon me. They overwhelmed me with their spells. I thought I would die. That must that must have been scary. Evelyn's voice is very quiet. I I wasn't afraid, Roland. I was ready to embrace death then. I thought it would be a relief. I was tied up on the ground and they beat me with stones and clubs. They were softening me, but didn't want me to bleed too much. As I slipped into darkness, I heard a male voice. I thought I was hit on the head too many times. I woke up being carried by Gerald. He had healed some of my wounds, but he exhausted many spells fighting the witches, and I was badly injured. He brought me to Mistwood's Druid Grove. The Druids have powerful healing magics. I had shattered bones and large bruises, but they healed me within a couple of days. I I owe Gerald my life, and now he's gone. What did you think of him? He was the kindest man I've ever known. He was so gentle and patient with me. I felt very comfortable with him. After the way people treated me in Southport and what happened at home, it was a welcome relief to be around someone like him. But I never told him how grateful I felt. I was afraid to trust him. But no matter what I told myself or how I pushed him away, his kindness and patience were limitless. I didn't realize how much he meant to me until he was taken away. I feel so guilty for having never thanked him for all he'd done. Evelyn is struggling to contain her emotions. I'm sure he knew how you felt. Still, it's not the same. You see a spark of hope in her expression. Do you think so? I wish I could speak to him just one last time. Right. What do you feel about me? Right. So, we more or less know most of this already, but it's good to know them better, I suppose.
What do you want?
I don't think Montador is eager to talk about too many personal things. Still, I might as well ask. Why do you bother with these girly questions? What do you want to know? Oh, do you have a family? What does it matter? My father was a weak fool who refused to enlist me into the military service. He served the army of Syrian and perished in a war with Ardalan. Ardalan. Upon his death, my mother gave me the freedom I needed to enlist with the Ramadans. Though not a Ramadan herself, she was strong for a female. Still, she perished in a disease during my training. Sorry about your loss. I don't need your pity. If she was strong enough in life, she will have a place among the gods now. If she was weak, she will not. Either way, she will have what she deserves. Hmm. Why are you in Claymore? We know the king does nothing, so combat experience. Um, don't you feel guilty when you kill? Guilt is a weakness I shed in my youth. Compassion isn't a weakness. I was taught that it is. It's an ingrained truth. Regardless, I'm not the murderer you may think I am. I've killed Ramadan brothers in training, a hazard we accept. I've killed many warriors in battle, a hazard they accepted when they went to battle against me. I've killed caged beasts that would sooner kill me, but I'm not a murderer. Would you kill civilians? There is no honor in slaying an unarmed civilian. What if he was armed and defending his home? He doesn't reply immediately. I've never invaded another's home. My reaction would depend on the reason I invaded it. A man has a right to defend his home, but he should know the danger he faces in attacking me. And if the civilian was a woman? His eyes opened wide with surprise. What female civilian would attack a Ramadan? A female soldier or a jungle Amazon, perhaps. You didn't answer my question. He looks uncomfortable. I don't know. I've never been faced with the situation. Hmm. Right. He seems to have some issues with women, but I'm not quite sure what the issue is. Hmm, tell me about your people. You found a topic that Montador is willing to talk about, so much so that he stopped scowling. Ramadans are a proud order of elite warriors sworn to fight for the King of Mer and to earn our place next to the gods. Tell me about your training. I will teach you some of our training methods since we travel together. Perhaps it will make you more useful. There are many things Ramadans value that other fighting orders do not. Real-world experience and the embrace of death. The value of real-world experience is obvious. There are stories of King Rand IV of Dinsmark, a land to the east of here, who once sailed an army across the Crescent Sea to conquer the Ikido province in Akkaida. Ikido samurai are legendary, but they are few. Rand's army was large and equipped with great deal of magically enchanted armor and weapons. He invested a kingdom's fortune on it, so he might expand and win it all back. He failed, right? Montador grins evilly. He failed miserably. His men could ride cavalry across plains of grass, but they had no experience in the hills and marshes of Ikido. They were routed by the samurai, and Dinsmark has never recovered. Any military would be foolish not to take notice. Ramadans train in deserts, high peaks, and other conditions to be prepared for anything. I was on my way to the Northlands partly because of the frigid conditions there. No real-world experience is complete without combat. I laugh when I see fools beating on combat dummies as if enemies would stand still in a fight. Ramadan fight each other with full gear and sharpened blades. We fight until the other is near death. Sometimes we go too far, but we understand how important it is. We are all willing to make that sacrifice, and we are stronger for it. I'm not sure if that's true. I'm sure in a world like this where magical healing is a thing, maybe it is. But in general, if you get injured in your training, it's a bad way to train. You're probably not learning anything particularly new about it, and it basically just hinders your future training because of the recovery needed. And naturally, if some people die in the training, you're just wasting resources. It's a I'm very well aware of the image that the tougher the training, the tougher the troops, or better the troops, but I don't think that's actually true. In some ways, they might be mentally more tough, but they wouldn't be better soldiers or more capable soldiers. And I'm sure that mental toughness can be trained through other means. I think there's in general sort of the image that if you go through some kind of extreme method, you're somehow always producing a better result. I think a common view like that is some form of Japanese metal manufacturing techniques from the olden days, like uh, I don't recall what different types I've heard, like feeding it through a chicken, the metal pieces to add something to them so it becomes better. But in reality, it's not that the methods are better and produce some kind of a mystical superior item. It's the methods are sort of convoluted and complicated because the materials they had to work with were inferior, so they had to try to compensate through other means. In areas where there's higher quality iron and steel, such things are just unnecessary waste and ridiculous waste of time. So, but once you sort of have that extra process in there, it sort of creates some kind of mythical image in people's mind that it had to be better because they went through all these ingenious or complicated methods instead of just forging the blades like other people did. Like somehow the more simpler, uncomplicated method had to produce uh, an inferior product, while that's not in any way true. So I'm sort of thinking that same type of thinking might apply to the training methods. Like if you have to do something really tough, something absolutely ridiculous, you somehow produce better soldiers, and that's not true. We fight other creatures as well. There are cages of all sizes on our trading grounds in Romathia, where we capture and place breasts. Yeah, place breasts. Capture and place beasts of all kinds. Bears, tigers, desert trolls, anything we can capture. I suppose that's an effective way to train. The problem would be that you're not really, if you're fighting wars, you're not gonna fight wars against bears and tigers. However, it would be a tough opponent. But the question again becomes, what exactly are you training? Um, Individually, I don't see that being all that useful. Again, because you're not; those are not the opponents you'll fight. But at the same time, maybe some kind of a group sort of take down a tiger or a bear. I don't know. I suppose there's something in it, in the basically the courage you need to find. Everyone thinks they're brave in all tough situations, or at least a lot of people do, and I don't think all of them will be brave in that if that situation really comes up. So it would at least be a test of a sort. That's an effective way to train. It's an effective way to train because we get a chance to kill creatures of different kinds, different sizes. Each of them have different strengths, strategies, and cunning. Do you know what the biggest difference is between a good warrior and a bad one? Um, Strength, quickness, natural skill, toughness, cunning, size, fear. I think fear would be the likeliest, because that's sort of in real life and in gaming, that's true. Any game with morality system is usually on, and every experience I've had versus newcomers and experienced ones is the experienced ones know what to do. They don't get phased by things that happen. They're much more efficient, even if they're not stronger or quicker or more accurate. Simply because they know what they're doing and they they basically just do it in a very natural way. That takes practice, that takes experience, and I think fear sort of is sort of an answer to that. There's no hesitation or things like that, so they're much more effective. They can think and function while under stress or enemy fire. So I think fear, they know how to deal with fear. It just becomes something that's part of it, but they can still function, still think, still function as a group, organize, act smartly. So fear. Exactly. The difference is fear. Fear of death. Physical attributes, bars, and expensive equipment are meaningless if you flee at the first sign of trouble. They are meaningless if you aren't willing to take the risks and face your death. That's why we are given wrath of resurrection when our training is complete. We are encouraged to fight stronger enemies, and if we die once or twice, we can learn from it so it doesn't happen again. What is death like? I've never been dead long enough to know. One moment I black out, the next moment I'm awake. Hmm. How many times have you died? Several. Let's leave it at that. Let's talk about your people then. I'm not sure if it's the fear of death that he talks about. It's sometimes it's simply a confidence in what you're doing. I mean, you don't have to have a fear of death if you're trying to do a new thing, and it doesn't have to have a chance of dying, but you can be very nervous. You have a lot of extra motions, not emotions, but simply extra movements, unnecessary movements. It will just increase inefficiency, so you will not be nearly as effective. So I don't think it's fear of death. Either way. Where do Ramadans come from? From my mother's, yeah. We come from the islands Rumathia in the Gulf of Spartis. What is it like? It's a moderately sized island of white sand and bleached rock. There's little vegetation there. Water is a clear light blue, much like the sky, and the weather is warm all year. Sounds nice. You sound like a woman. Okay. It's probably very much macho culture, I suppose. You have your warrior lifestyle and everything else is sort of viewed as not necessarily inferior in a way, but any kind of show of weakness or softness is viewed as a female trait? Where is it exactly? In the far southern region of Istar, the Gulf of Sparta spills from the waters of the Serpent's Channel. The island belongs to Mer, a region of Istar ruled by King Tain. Right. Um, do the Ramadans have a leader? Yes. We are a group of thousands, so there must be a hierarchy of leadership to keep us organized. Our leader is Oraxis. Probably. Yeah, what's he like? He's huge, nearly as tall as an ogre and probably stronger. The only reason he's never mistaken for one is because Oraxis is hairier. He has a thick brown beard that falls to his belt. So probably, basically, the one of the best warriors is going to be the leader. Is he a good leader though? He's a brute with some cunning, but his role is not to plan battle strategies or to draw up taxation policies. He keeps us in order like a tribal chief. He's the strongest warrior in Ishtar, and that's reason enough for us to follow him, right? So that's probably why they're also sort of subservient to a king. They literally function only as a fighting force, so anything extra is viewed as unnecessary. The thinking is basically left to other people. Well, sort of. They're not exactly stupid, but they're cunning. They don't value probably scholarly pursuits. In times of war, we take instructions from King Tain or his generals. Right. Why are you sworn to fight for the King of Mer? There was a time, centuries ago, when Romathia was an island of farmers and nothing more. Nations in Istar were just beginning to form their borders through war. The people of Romathia would have been destroyed. When invaders came, however, the armies of Mer came to their rescue. Because of this, the people of Romathia swore their allegiance to Mer. In later years, in order to defend themselves, the Romadans were formed. As the years passed, the soil in Romathia became rock, and the people began to concentrate on their warrior craft. Ramadans became the fiercest, most powerful fighters in Istar. Our allegiance to Mir remains, and every Ramadan swears the same oath. What is King Tain? What is King Tain like? Tain is a fool. He sits about his throne in Sirion wielding the power to conquer Istar and doesn't have the wit to use it. He's a ruler hated by the people he taxes and loathed by the military he neglects. All he cares about is his fortune, his living off the spoils of his ancestors and returning nothing to the glory of Mer. The streets are cracked, the buildings are crumbling, the farms are dying, and the Ramadans are left stagnant. So why don't you leave his service? Because of the oath, yeah, that's why he's lawful evil. Did I not mention I swore an oath? My loyalty is more than my oath, however. I am also loyal to Mir and Romanthia. I fight for my glory and the glory of the nation. Should I break my oath, I would also lose my place among the gods when I die. Thane is a fool, but I will serve him even if I hate him. So my brothers and I wait for a war that may never come. Anything new? What's this about the place next to the gods? Right, I think we've talked about this before. What happens to the weak? Yeah, we've done this before. How do you feel about me? You would be far less aggravating if you stopped asking these inane questions. Fair enough. Talking is for girls, apparently. Heresy.
Greetings to you.
Let's talk for a moment. What would you like to know about? Uh, Arterra yourself. Okay, only two topics. How did you come to Arterra? Yeah, we know the bronze dragon egg trade. It's the same story she already told us. Do you have a family? My kind do not have families as people on your world do. Then how were you born? Surely you had a mother. The details of my birth are not known to me, although I have seen Lord Asmat trade for new succubi. He traded for them? Lord Asmat would send warrior fiends from his army to the Lady of Disloyalty, and she would produce succubi for him. I was likely produced in the same way. Uh, produced? The birthing process appears similar to the process used by mothers on your world, but succubi are born in adult form. I was born as I am now. I've heard that fiends come from the souls of the damned. The warriors of Lord Asmat's army are created from the souls of those who were judged to be dishonorable in life. The Lady of Disloyalty does not create succubi in the same way. Our souls have no connection to your world. Many fiends of my world have souls that belong to the abyss, not because of evils performed in life or by the judgment of a god. These souls were there since the creation of the abyss, just as the souls of many celestials have been there since the creation of the heavens. I do not know any more about this topic, Robin. Hey, who is the Lady of Disloyalty? She is a fiend, but one who would be mistaken for a goddess on your world, for her beauty is absolute. But she would also be considered evil, as her only goal is to destroy such concepts as love and loyalty. She has many names in many planes. We call her the Lady of Disloyalty. So she is your mother? On your world you may consider her as such, but succubi have no kinship toward her, and she has none toward us. Fiends do not have family, Roland. How old are you, then? I do not know the answer to that question, Roland. My kind do not keep time as people on your world do. Give me your best guess, then. She thinks for a moment. I would guess that I have existed for 50 of your years. You don't look a day older than 20. I was born this way, and I shall remain as such. My kind do not exist as your kind, Roland. So you're immortal. I cannot die of advanced age, nor can I perish by physical means on your world. Okay, what does that mean? My natural plane of existence is the abyss. If I perish physically on your world, my soul will return to abyss where my physical shape will reform over time. However, because you own the bonds of my existence, upon reforming in the abyss, I will be returned to your side as though you had summoned me. So I guess, uh, right, if she dies, that's exactly what will happen. What is the abyss like? It has many layers, and each layer is different from the next. The layer I am from is very warm compared to this world. There is no water, animals, or trees as you have here.
The landscape is a barren red rock, and the sky is eternally covered in a black cloud. There is no day and night. Lakes and rivers of lava and active volcanoes are used as means of mapping territory.
That sounds interesting.
Most of your kind would find it unnerving, though it is no more or less natural than this world to me.
How did your former masters treat you? Well, uh, I'm guessing as a slave because that's the only thing she knew.
I do not know how to answer that question, Roland. They were my masters and I was their slave. I was treated as any other succubus slave.
Okay, then describe what life was like with your former masters.
Would you like to hear about Lord Azimuth, Sigmanis, or Bentley?
Um, let's start from the beginning. Lord Asmat.
Lord Azimuth was my first master. Most of my time was spent in the succubus pens, while the constant wars of the abyss raged outside. Sometimes the battle would rage into the pens, and we would be forced to fight or flee. A succubus who flees from battle faces the same punishment as any fiend who flees. It would be considered horrible in your world. The fiend is not meant to survive it. Sometimes Lord Asmat would require the services of his succubi slaves for himself. Other times he would command one of us to seduce a mortal into performing a service for him. If a succubus fails to seduce a mortal, she is punished. I have never been punished by Lord Asmat. I would not be here otherwise.
She looks at you for a moment.
What do you think of me for doing such things?
I think you did what you had to do. I mean, if the it's hard to just judge someone when you have no reasonable or realistic ways to leave or decline. So you did what you had to do.
I see.
Tell me about life with Sikmanis.
Sigmanis was my first mortal master, an archmage from the land you call Istar, whom I served for 20 of your years. He traded me for a bronze dragon egg. I was not meant to seduce him, but he was charmed nonetheless.
I have my doubts about that because why would Lord Asmat bring her to the trade unless he had some kind of ulterior motive for her? Yeah, trade basically a succubus or a powerful magical item for. So I'm guessing the succubus might have been the preferable trade. I mean, in abyss, in here a succubus might be rare, but in abyss, succubus are basically the a standard fiend of a sort.
He kept me in his bedchamber in his tower. I was permitted to wander the rooms sometimes, but I was forbidden from leaving the tower, and I was forbidden from seeing most of his guests. I did not understand the mind of Sigmanis. He was unlike any other mortal I have met, perhaps because he is powerful by mortal standards. He was very unpredictable.
What do you mean?
His mood changes from one day to the next. On one day he would tell me he loved me, and I would sense no deception, and he would command me to pleasure him, and he would enjoy it. The next day he would be angry with me. He would scold me for charming him and causing him to lose time on his work. Sometimes he would strike me and unleash his magic on me. He has nearly killed me many times.
Did you fight back? She is puzzled by your question.
No, he was my master and I am to endure my master's punishments.
Okay, what happened after he hit you?
He would return the next day and apologize to me. He would help me to recover and treat me gently, until I was well enough to pleasure him again. Is this what mortals call love?
No, Percy, that is not love.
I see.
Right. So basically, a sex slave on a fairly unstable person. I can see that he wants her because she's a succubus, but at the same time, he hates that he wants her. Consider the lich we met, very sort of want to focus on increasing his power, and us as undead, he sort of was starting to forget his sort of desire for revenge from whatever happened when he was alive. So I'm guessing a mortal person would be more about, yeah, you want to focus on what your intellectual pursuits, but you can't deny the emotions and desires of your flesh and blood body. So, sort of a love-hate relationship toward Percy. Wants her, but doesn't want her to meet with anyone else. At the same time, hates her because the wizard would basically be sort of addicted to her, and he hates it. Maybe sprinkled with some mental instability, and you have a winner right there. Tell me about Bentley.
Bentley was my last master, who I served for 4 of your years. He had acquired me from Sigmanis for a small amount of gold.
Yeah, that sort of puzzles me. Why would Sigmanis give her up? I well, I can't see him giving her up fully, considering how he acted.
Bentley never asked me to pleasure him for fear of his wife, but he enjoyed showing me to people and asked me to serve as his guest sometimes. He often taught me lessons to better interact with people. I was never permitted to leave my chamber except when he traveled to faraway places, and I was brought along.
So he traveled with you sometimes.
Yes, we traveled to places such as Dunhaven, Thenopolis, and the Ivory Hall. Why have you not caged me?
What do you mean?
When I traveled with Bentley, I was always put in a steel cage, just large enough to stand in, and I was never permitted to leave it. As you are my new master, I thought you would put me in a cage.
Uh, yeah, I don't. I would never treat you so poorly. She pauses for a moment in thought.
Then you consider Bentley's treatment of me poor?
Yes, and I promise to treat you better.
I see. Then I should thank you, Roland.
I think we're done. We can't ask Percy how she feels about us. We can do that with everyone else. Hmm. She's sort of an odd one naturally, but it's pretty much impossible to see what she's thinking because there's clearly something like the love of the forest and trees, that there's something ticking behind the mask she's portraying. At the same time, the mask isn't something that she's wearing to deceive really. It just That's how she's always been. That's how her life has always been. Uh, that's that's her has been her natural place in life. That's everything she's ever known. So she doesn't really question that in any way. But it's still clear that there's some kind of kernel of some kind of independent desire and thought under all that. Right, I'll actually end it here, because this way I can easily separate this. Hopefully we don't have to do these type of talking sessions. It's not that I dislike what I'm hearing or reading, it's that I feel that, especially, there has been some interactions with the companions, between the companions, and sometimes they've been talking to me. I feel that's a better way to handle these things in general, because it sort of spreads them out and mixes them into the natural flow of things, instead of let's put everything aside for like a half an hour or an hour and just talk about things. It's very disruptive to the flow of the game.